By sunrise, the mailboxes of Harbor Lantern HOA were bobbing like buoys, and the president, draped in a plastic poncho the color of denial, was yelling with a desperate tone, "This pond is decorative," as a king tide slurper golf cart down Pelican Loop. A stop sign disappeared with a tidy gulp. The HOA newsletter, laminated for quote, all-weather durability unquote, sailed past like a very confident leaf. A garden gnome floated by wearing someone's abandoned sun hat, looking oddly dignified for ceramic caught in a flood. I'm Nolan Pierce, quiet guy, contractor, lives at the edge of Seabright Cove with a workshop full of clamps and a dog that answers to, "Hey." I drink black coffee and avoid committees. My nearest HOA is Harbor Lantern, run by Paula Merryweather, a woman who believes tides are a rumor invented by surfers. Paula once fined a man for quote, aggressive wind chimes unquote. She measured grass with a ruler every Tuesday and sent violation notices for blades over 3.5 inches. I rent a small cottage just outside her boundaries on higher ground. But my clients? Many of them live under Paula's pastel thumb. I've been a coastal contractor for 23 years, rebuilt homes after 12 major storms, and I know exactly what water wants to do when you give it half a chance. November came around, and I sent a polite email. King tides scheduled next month. Your storm drains are clogged with the crushed seashell mulch you adore. The quote decorative berm unquote is a speed bump for the ocean. Consider installing backflow preventers and leaving the tidal gate alone. I included NOAA charts, historical flood maps, and photos from the last king tide that reached the parking lot. Paula replied with a gif of a lighthouse and the caption, "We are resilient." She then issued a bulletin titled, "Hurricane Chic, Embrace Coastal Aesthetics," followed by "No sandbags on porches," with a note in parentheses saying, "Unsightly." The newsletter included a color palette of approved emergency supply containers, all in shades of seafoam and coral. I watched as Harbor Lantern replaced native dune grass with what they called coastal-approved topiary. These were boxwood hedges trimmed into dolphin shapes that cost $800 each. They filled the drainage swale to expand a meditation lawn, with Paula declaring in a newsletter that quote, water is a mindset unquote. They banned door-mounted flood shields as quote, hostile design unquote. Then Paula hired her cousin's landscaping crew to literally vacuum the beach so photos looked tidy. They removed kelp, driftwood, and anything she deemed quote, inconsistent with our vision unquote. The crew worked at night so residents wouldn't see the industrial vacuum truck sucking up nature. Neighbors started leaving me voicemails. One said with a confused tone, "Paula says the tide map is fear-mongering." Another told me with disbelief, "She told us to put pool noodles in the vents." A third message came from an elderly couple who said with worry, "She's threatening to fine us for the sandbags in our garage. We can't see them from the street, but somehow she knows." One guy showed me a letter fining him for stacking sandbags behind a boxwood. The violation. Visual disharmony. $250. I brought the HOA board a binder titled, "Things Water Does," including diagrams and an estimate for backflow valves. The presentation took me 3 days to prepare. I had charts showing water flow rates, photos of similar communities that ignored warnings, and a timeline of exactly what would happen when the king tide arrived. Paula tapped the cover and said with a dismissive tone, "Our brand is elevated serenity." Board member Janet, who always wore pearls to meetings, added with false sweetness, "Perhaps you could focus on your own property, Mr. Pierce." "Oh wait, you're a renter." They laughed like this was the height of wit. I tried one more time at the November board meeting. I stood up during public comment and explained with careful patience that the decorative berm they'd installed was actually creating a funnel effect that would channel water directly into the lower streets. I showed them photos of the tide gate, explaining how it worked, why it existed, and what would happen if someone compromised it. Paula interrupted me mid-sentence to announce they were adding a new violation category called quote, doom-mongering unquote, with fines starting at $500. The week before the king tide, Paula held what she called a tide rehearsal where volunteers practiced posing for drone footage beside teal Adirondacks. She'd hired a professional photographer to capture what she called quote, our resilience aesthetic unquote. Residents were instructed to wear whites and pastels only. One woman was sent home for wearing navy blue. Afterward, I found the maintenance crew jiggling the chain on the municipal tide gate that keeps seawater from marching up the canal at high tide. One guy confessed with a nervous tone, "Paula wants it quote, more open for ambience unquote." He showed me a work order signed by Paula requesting the gate be quote adjusted for optimal water feature viewing unquote. I called the City Public Works, the Coastal Commission, and the Harbor Master, and I emailed the board again. Tampering with public infrastructure is illegal and also high water. I attached photos of the maintenance crew at the gate, copies of Paula's work order, and relevant municipal codes. Paula replied all with an indignant tone saying, Nolan is not a homeowner within Harbor Lantern and thus lacks vibe jurisdiction. She copied the entire neighborhood on this email, adding, some people simply don't understand the difference between living with the ocean and living in fear of it. 3 days before the king tide, I made one last attempt. I printed 500 flyers at my own expense warning residents about the upcoming tide, listing the exact time it would peak, and providing instructions for protecting their homes. Paula sent a mass email within 2 hours labeled Unauthorized Literature Alert, claiming I was trespassing and distributing quote alarmist propaganda unquote. She reminded everyone that only board-approved materials could be distributed and threatened legal action against anyone seen with my flyers. King tide morning arrived on a sky the color of a stainless steel sink. At 5:45 a.m., I positioned myself on the public sidewalk just outside Harbor Lantern with my camera. The tide was scheduled to peak at 6:17 a.m. At 6:03 a.m., seawater bullied past the quote decorative berm unquote and took a lazy left into Pelican Loop. The brand-new meditation lawn became a brisk, determined stream. The dolphin topiaries disappeared first, $800 shrubs becoming very expensive submarines. Backflow preventers, which they had not bought, would have helped. Instead, toilets burped brine like sea dragons awakening. I heard the first scream at 6:09 when someone flushed and got a geyser. Public Works trucks roared in at 6:22. The crew chief found the tide gate chain tied off with a tasteful ribbon in Harbor Lantern's signature seafoam green. He radioed it in with an official tone that meant trouble. The harbor master wrote something on a very official pad while shaking his head. Code enforcement taped bright orange notices to the clubhouse door, which was already standing in 3 inches of water. Paula tried to pivot to messaging, announcing with false cheer, unexpected splash event. She was standing knee-deep in the parking lot, her white linen pants now transparent and clinging. The deputy pointed at the ribbon and asked whose idea that was. Paula indicated the sky with a gesture of pure denial, then tried to claim the ribbon must have blown there from a nearby wedding. By 7:20 a.m., Harbor Lantern was a postcard from Atlantis. The HOA's No Sandbags decree met the physics of saltwater and lost, loudly. Cars floated in the resident parking area. The clubhouse coffee bar, Paula's pride with its $3,000 espresso machine, was serving saltwater lattes to no one. A drone captured Paula being ferried from the submerged clubhouse in a neighbor's kiddie kayak, clutching a binder labeled Aesthetic Guidelines-Winter. The kayak was hot pink, violating at least 3 HOA color codes. The video went viral under the caption, Vibe Jurisdiction Meets Tide Jurisdiction. Within 4 hours it had 2 million views. The city cited the HOA for unauthorized interference with public works, ordered immediate remediation, and handed the board a bill for emergency pumping. The Coastal Commission fined them for dune removal. The county billed them for contaminated runoff into the marsh. Turns out topiary dye is not marsh safe. Who knew? Insurance flagged quote negligent management unquote and kicked several claims back to the board. One adjuster told me with amazement that in 40 years, he'd never seen an HOA actually invite flooding through policy. Members discovered that Paula's quote savings unquote fund had been spent on monogrammed wayfinding signs and an ocean scent diffuser package. She'd also commissioned a $40,000 sculpture called Waves of Harmony that now lay on its side like a beached metal whale. The emergency pumping alone cost $47,000. The Coastal Commission fine? $85,000. The county contamination cleanup? $120,000. The insurance denial meant homeowners would split these costs personally. Each household faced a special assessment of $8,200, due within 30 days. Paula resigned with a statement saying she needed to quote curate personal horizons unquote, which is HOA speak for told to leave before the votes sharpen. The board, under a new president who owns boots, reversed the sandbag ban, restored the swale, replanted dune grass, and installed the backflow valves from page 1 of my binder. They found my original presentation in the trash, coffee-stained but still readable. As for Paula, the city arranged a delightful punishment. 200 hours of community service rebuilding wetlands under the supervision of the Parks Department she once fined for quote rustic signage unquote. She now spends Saturdays planting cordgrass while a sign nearby reads, "High water respects no newsletter." The judge also ordered her to complete a course on coastal management and pay personal restitution of $15,000 for the tampered tide gate. I kept it simple. I dropped a small brass plaque at the entrance, "Anonymous gift, approved by the new board." It says, "Aesthetics yield to physics." Paula's face when she saw it on her first day of community service? She stood there in her court-mandated orange vest, muddy boots replacing her usual kitten heels, staring at those 4 words with the expression of someone who finally understood that the ocean doesn't read HOA bylaws. Her mouth opened and closed like a fish, no words coming out, just the slow realization that her 200 hours of planting marsh grass started now.